Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for being here. As always, today we are going to open up the Harbor Freight brand dust collector and see what it's all about. Is it worth $210 plus shipping? I'm hoping so, because dust is a problem in a blade shop. Okay, before we get too carried away on this project, I need to point out something because it is a safety consideration, and that is this dust collector is designed for collecting wood dust in like a wood shop and that kind of thing. Now I am going to use it for my grinder that I grind steel on, and as well as wood when I do knife handles and things like that. Now, the reason this is important is because not only is metal dust and or the tiny fine shavings that a grinding belt will create when you're grinding steel, not only is that flammable and can burn, you are creating sparks when you're grinding steel, obviously. And so if you're sucking those sparks into a bag of flammable material, whether that's steel dust and or shavings or wood dust and or shavings, the problem is still the same, obviously, which is fire. And then of course add to that the air blast, which provides extra oxygen. You can have yourself a real problem. So typically when you have a metal grinding dust collector, you have something, I shouldn't say typically, this is sort of necessary. You have something that's going to either arrest those sparks or mitigate them. And one method that I'm familiar with is a water trap, where you basically shoot the material that you're pulling into a bucket of water, essentially, and there's a path for the air to continue on by, and whatever doesn't get held down in the water, it's a water trap, and it mitigates the sparks that way. Another method that I'm going to use is to provide enough length of ducting or pipe for the spark to have time to expire long before it gets to the dust collector itself. And that is one of the reasons I'm going to use that method, is because since I am going to be using this for wood dust as well, each and or both, depending on what stage of a project I'm at, a water trap really isn't a great option, because if you're going to shoot wood dust, it's going to gunk it up really quickly and not work very well. So my plan is to use a long section of aluminum ducting that is obviously non-flammable, and give that spark plenty of time to expire long before it gets to the flammable material that we're collecting in the bag. So that's an important thing to point out, and let's continue on. I'm assuming that's the stand for the whole setup, so we'll set that over here. Okay, some bits and pieces. Ooh, it looks like assembly's involved. Yeah, that's kind of heavy. Blower motor. Looks pretty well built. All right, well let's find some instructions and see what we need to do to get this all together. So I'm pretty sure that my idea of wiring in a separate plug outlet for this dust collector is going to be the ticket. Unfortunately, all the lights and all the outlets are in this building, in the shop, are wired into the same same breaker, 20 amp breaker. And no, I wasn't using my grinder, I was using my chop saw, and I was tripping it. So my plan, I think I'm gonna add a heavier breaker right at this end of the shop here, and I'll be able to use it for the blower and the chop saw and angle grinders and stuff over here. So I think that'll be a good plan. So what do we have here? So you can see how it goes together roughly, but I need to look at important safety information. Don't need that. That's a joke. But really, where do we get to put it together? All right, base plate, bolts. All right, we've made some real progress here. I've got one of these casters attached to the base, and for whatever reason, Harbor Freight or Central Machinery didn't find it necessary to delineate which screws and bolts go where. They seem to have made the assumption that if you're using equipment that would require some kind of a dust collector, that you have a level of common sense and or critical thinking skills that would allow you to deduce from the number of bolts and screws matched to the number of holes in the placement as to which screws and bolts to use. In today's age, I find that very irresponsible, Harbor Freight. But let's press on. Okay, so I've installed all 4 casters in each corner, which greatly minimizes the number of holes that we have to put bolts into. So that right there is going to make things a little bit easier going forward. So let's consult the instructions again here. Oh, okay. Let's look at this here. Now, based on the hole pattern, the blower motor mount goes here and not anywhere else. Almost like it was designed that way. All right, that's the machine assembled. Really not too bad. I don't have any leftover bits and pieces, so that's always a good sign. So let's fire this thing up and see what it does. Well, it seems to have pretty good sucking power. Pulled the dust in, so I'm excited to get this thing hooked up. Alright guys, with the blower set up, now we need to hook it up to the machines. And I ran over to, well, I drove, but I went over to the friendly folk at the local farm supply store, got some sheet metal 26 gauge. No, it's not galvanized, it's just bright and clean. And got that and some sheet metal screws. And I need to build a tray funnel thing, something that'll catch all the sparks and dust and hook it up to our ducting to the blower. So I'm gonna pretend like I know what I'm doing, some sheet metal here, and make something that'll work. Right off the bat, maybe the biggest challenge here is making something that will accommodate all of the various different work surfaces on the grinder here, the wheel, the flat grinding plate, and of course the small wheel attachment, because I want something that's close enough to the whole work area that will actually pull the dust away effectively, but obviously you have to make it so that all these parts work with it. So from what I can figure, I need something that's about 10 inches out and about 8 inches wide, and my plan as of right now is to make a side outtake, I guess it would be, so that when the sparks are coming down, they're just hitting the sheet steel, the metal plate here, and then instead of hitting our ducting, which is aluminum and would not hold up to that kind of thing. So that's kind of my plan as of right now. So as far as I can tell, the only way to do this is by making a pattern out of some expendable material like cardboard, so that we know exactly what to cut out. You know, there's really no other way to do that without wasting a bunch of time and material. This is a rough sketch, a basic idea of what I'm trying to do here. So this is where the ducting is going to come off of here, and this is our tabletop right here. The grinder wheel, well, I guess it's going to be about like that, coming off of there, or the flat work surface as the case may be, but no lower than the top of the table, obviously. So it's basically just a, yeah, it's just that. How do I do that? Well, let's see. There's probably a couple ways. I could cut out each piece, whether it's a rectangle or a different shape. There's a name for that. And using flanges on the side or tabs, I could attach them that way with screws. That might be the simplest way to do it. This piece right here can wrap all the way around, so that's just one piece technically, and then I just need a piece for each side, and then another piece that I can form a pipe nipple essentially for the ducting. So that doesn't seem too terribly complicated. Okay, these are our basic pieces aside from the round part. You know, in hindsight, I should have left some extra and bent it over. We will just use this as our pattern and then flip it down like so. Okay, so now I need to mark a strip. Piece of 1/2 inch square rod, just flush it up to the outside edge. Mark that off. Okay, I'm going to bend this little flange first. Line this up here. Pretty good. Okay, so I need to cut out more clearance here. Cool, I think the basic idea will work. Self-tapping sheet metal screw, a little longer than I need, but shouldn't matter. As long as you can hold everything still, should be pretty simple. And then it goes all at once. Cool. All right. Well, so far it's going pretty good. Definitely think it's going to be a usable thing. So that's good. Now I did the right side first because the left side now needs some kind of a hole cut in it and some way to attach our ducting to take it to the dust collector. Okay, it's starting to look like a thing that will do what it needs to do. Anyway, sheet metal, even when it doesn't have a sharp edge, will still cut you, so be careful. Alright guys, so the final setup on this before I get serious and actually start working will include this additional length of ducting and this one. And I'm actually thinking about putting it over in the corner closer to the breaker panel, and that'll help with the wiring up of the whole thing. I don't know. Either way, the ducting's either going to be coiled underneath here somewhere, or whatever. But as long as we have that length for that to mitigate any sparks, we should be good. Okay, so there's the preliminary setup. It's not where it's going to be. I mean, the nice thing about it is it has casters on the bottom, so you can move it. I can move it where I want it, and I don't necessarily have to have it set in one spot. So if I need to, I can take it out when I need it, whatever. But I probably want to have it set up most of the time anyway. Let's give this a shot and see what happens. Okay, so first impression. I started the rough grind on this blade, and I purposely did not wear my respirator just so I could smell or, you know, tell what was in the air or what wasn't. And it definitely makes a huge difference. I could still feel some stuff coming off the wheel up here, and so it's not gonna get everything, but definitely a huge difference. And you can see once I start using water to cool the blade off, and I've got some stuff sticking in there because of the water, and that'll probably cause that to rust eventually. I'm not sure. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But it definitely sucks in the debris. I'll show you what it's picked up so far. Down here in the bag, there's that. There's some on this corner too, more on this corner, quite a bit. So normally that, and then you can see the real fine stuff. It looks like just a gray film almost. Normally all that would be in the air and on everything in the shop, and now that much of it's not, which is most of it. So that's awesome. And the metal shavings or the metal dust isn't even the biggest concern really when you're grinding. It's the ceramic or aluminum oxide or whatever kind of grinding belt you're using. The dust from that's the stuff that'll really harm you. So I'll still be wearing a respirator, but it definitely makes a huge difference. I have a lot less grinding dust and junk on everything in the shop, so that's awesome. Another thing I noticed that I am going to have to address is the fact that the 10-inch wheel sits out further than the flat platen on the grinder here, and so to make this as effective as possible, this shouldn't be out this far when I'm using the flat platen. So to remedy that, I'm going to bend up a nice little cap, not this thing, but something that covers the portion of it, and then of course the smaller surface area, or I mean the smaller opening I should say, creates a higher suction value or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the technical term is, and it works better obviously that way. So that's going to be something I got to do when I'm switching to the flat platen. But overall it's definitely a big difference. And I think once I kind of fine-tune this setup and get the bandsaw hooked up to it and everything else as well, it's definitely going to be a huge asset to have this in the shop. And for the record, I paid my own hard-earned money for this, and I don't know, I'll let you guys know what I think of it in another 6 months or so, or a few dozen knives later. Alright guys, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it. You guys are what make this thing move forward, so thanks for being here. New videos Tuesday and Friday, so I will see you on the next video. Have a good one. So I did fix that. I didn't have all those tabs bent out. I think that'll be even better, obviously less obstruction.